Hey friends, welcome back. This is my final catch-up day, so hopefully everything goes smoothly from here and I can get these recordings in order. This is episode 6 of the Mindful Classroom. So on my even-numbered episodes, I'm going to try to talk about what I'm reading, maybe something that I have listened to recently, basically the more instructional line of it. So where the odd number episodes will be a meditation, the even numbered episodes will look at what I've come across, what's fascinated me, what's delighted me. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a book that I am currently finishing up. The book is by Stephen Batchelor. It's called The Art of Solitude. And you may know Stephen Batchelor. He has written quite a few books. The one I read before this was Buddhism Without Beliefs, which was a wonderful exploration of Buddhist principles, practices, life, but not necessarily being bogged down in all the formality of traditional Buddhist sects, but looking at where it appeals into our life and where it plays into our life. This one gathered my attention because I love the idea of solitude. I think the idea of spending a little bit of time every day in contemplation, maybe sometimes once every couple months, going for an extended period of time, really getting yourself alone for a day or 2 days, enough time that you can mull over all those ideas that come before you. And the way that Stephen Batchelor looks at it here is every chapter is largely a meditation on some form of solitude. So he bases quite a bit of it on the philosopher Montaigne. And in the beginning, he talks about Montaigne going to the tower and removing himself to really internalize and look at what he is trying to study at this time. So he goes through Montaigne's writings. And, in fact, Montaigne has an essay that you can look for further, and I will try to link it in the notes, called On Solitude. And he takes Montaigne's idea of solitude, and then he applies that to other individuals, including himself, who've gone through that point of going into solitude. So what I want to do is share with you a chapter, and from there, kind of talk about it and see where we go. There are 2 chapters that stood out to me, so I will look at those. The first one is later in the book, chapter 16. The 8th century Chinese Zen teacher, Mazu Dai, once said, "All of you should realize that your own mind is Buddha. This mind is Buddha's mind. You who seek the truth should realize there is nothing to seek. There is no Buddha but mind, no mind but Buddha." Mazu's point is simple. He's saying that whatever you seek to achieve in meditation is already right here before your eyes. As soon as you use the words like Buddha or enlightenment or truth, you tend to imagine something far away from the situation you find yourself in now. Mazu tells us that these things are found only in the very midst of what it means to be human in the moment. They are not located anywhere else, nor, he is saying, are they hidden somewhere in another dimension or your psyche. They are right here in the messiness, confusion, darkness, and anxiety of the very mind that is reading these words. Before I go on, I'm going to pause there because I love that end. And I think it's something that we lose. I know for me personally, I'll sit in meditation in the morning and I go through that moment of really just clearing my head and being present and being in the moment. But it's important to realize that that's not the essence of truly finding who we are. The who we are, we find in, as he says, the messiness, the confusion, the darkness, and the anxiety of the very mind that's reading these words. We find out who we are by how we respond to the situations that we find ourselves in. In Stoicism, It's the obstacle that's in the path is the path. It's the way. We can't avoid these obstacles in our life and think that we're really going to come to terms with improving and who we are and what we need to do. They're meant to be there. They're there to show us who we are, and how we respond to them and how we grow from them is what's so important. Every single one of us is going to get put in our place and knocked down and set back in life. And those who grow and those who succeed manage to take that lesson, internalize that lesson, and then grow from that lesson. So it further comes on, and I might add, the body of the Buddha is nothing but the very body that sits on your cushion. Its heart beating, its lungs drawing and exhaling each breath, its knees aching from sitting cross-legged. Stop making a difference between what you think you are and who you think the Buddha is. And that passage really struck me because I remember when I sat at a Vipassana retreat, and for 3 of the meditation hours that we did, we were told not to move. And to realize that the cramps in your leg, the pain from kneeling or sitting cross-legged, whatever you felt was a part of the process and who you were. And it was temporary. So that you acknowledge that pain. It's there. I feel it. And it hurts. And it's uncomfortable. But if I sit with it, I can realize that eventually it's going to pass. And that concept comes up in pain meditation. Pain meditation never makes the pain go away. It just lets us realize that this pain isn't something that's going to stay forever. That it is something that as we pay attention to it, I can feel it lessen. I can feel myself moving away from it. And in that way that I can learn to live through it and move beyond it. Mazu once asked, "What is the meaning of Buddhism?" He retorted, "What is the meaning of this moment? Try and drop every notion you've formed about the Buddha and Buddhism. Get rid of any thoughts you might have of enlightenment. Instead, just be still. Pay attention to what you experience here and now, and let yourself be drawn into the mystery of simply being human. The puzzle of being here at all. What is this thing you're experiencing right now in all of its stripped bare vulnerability? Ineffability, banality. What is that? What is this thing that was thrust into the world at birth? This thing that will get sick? This thing that will get old, that will die? What is it? Let go of any answers to the question that you may have acquired from Buddhism or elsewhere. Put all such thoughts out of your mind. The practice of Zen is about coming to terms with the question of who and what you are. Allow yourself to be a mystery for yourself, rather than a set of more or less interesting facts. Most human beings at certain moments in their lives experience something like this. It might happen through being in nature, through art, through falling in love, through practicing philosophy and coming closer to death. At any moment when you suddenly are overwhelmed by the fact that you are here at all, rather than not here. And I loved those passages because it's really a part of where learning comes from. It's in those moments that we find ourselves and that we truly appreciate what we have. So, when you come off of a time of being sick and you heal and you really can look back and realize how lucky you are for the health you have, and probably what we've largely taken for granted, because we often do take our health for granted until you have some kind of a health scare or you go through something that makes you appreciate that. The period of time that I had COVID and I was really struggling with breathing and I was hospitalized because of my breathing, I now really appreciate my breath and my ability to breathe. So those times are very significant to me. And I think that's that idea. The other thing is the idea of art. We through art, we learn to appreciate what other people went through. I mean, that's the beauty of how we get moved by music. We hear a song that entails somebody else's pain and suffering, and it's cathartic. There's a catharsis in hearing that we didn't have to go through it, but we experience it from somebody else. Empathy is gained through literature. Reading of these other experiences, we can gain empathy for those without having to go through them. So it then goes on, when you ask, what is this? Do not narrow the sense of this just to what is palpable within the confines of your own skin. This includes the totality of what is present in this moment, what's arising from within, and what's going on all around you. One might even say it's what is prior to the distinction between self and other, you and me, you and the world. Before I think that I'm here and you're there, something primordial like the sense of the world an unformed child might have. And that's a huge thing that I've been really thinking about and weighing with, is that idea of losing that sense of self and separation, seeing yourself in everybody else. And it can come down to whatever your belief is. The idea of, all of us containing the God spirit, and then being able to see God in all of us. And the hard part of that is, if you truly want to believe that, you have to be able to see that spark and that energy of the universe in everybody. Even people that you don't agree with, and even people that you might not like, you have to acknowledge it's there. Zen practice is about opening yourself to the mystery, allowing yourself to become totally immersed in the perplexity or wonder it evokes, so that it begins to suffuse your subconscious as a whole, or your consciousness as a whole, not just when you're meditating. Whether you're sitting cross-legged on a cushion or peeling potatoes in the kitchen, notice how utterly strange all this is. Let the astonishment take hold of you more and more and become part of your felt sense of being in the world. Questioning infuses your awareness. Experience comes alive in a startling and puzzling way. And that reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by a Vietnamese Buddhist Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, that talked about the true sense of meditating is when you're washing the dishes. You're washing the dishes. You're not doing it to get it finished. You're not doing it to move on to the next thing. You're doing it to perfection. And that sense of finding that in every act that we can perform. And it's hard to do. I have plenty of things that I just want to get them over with so I can do the next thing and be at the next place. But the sad part of doing that is we don't live in the moment we're in. We're looking ahead at something that's coming, and we're always forsaking where we are now. So, almost finished. I find myself utterly incapable of putting what is I'm experiencing right now into words. I do know what on earth is going on here. The practice is, what is this? Confronts you with what philosophers call the sheer facticity of your existence. This is the inescapable reality of what it's like to be me, which seems impossible to articulate or define. This is the embodied inquiry. When you first ask, what is this in meditation, the question may have little traction on how you feel in your body. It may seem, just as curious, a mental exercise. It might not grab you vicariously at all. But over time, as you settle into a quieter, more lucid awareness, this perplexity begins to resonate and reverberate through your nerves, flesh, bones, and skin. Don't expect anything to happen. Just wait. This waiting is deep acceptance of the moment as such. Nietzsche called it amor fati, unquestioning love of whatever has fated you to be here. You reach a point where you're just sitting there asking, what is this? But with no interest in the answer. The longing for an answer compromises the potency of the question. Can you be satisfied to rest in this puzzlement, this perplexity, in a deeply focused and embodied way? Just waiting without expectations. Ask, what is this? Then open yourself completely to what you hear in the silence that follows. Be open to the question, in the same way as you would listen to a piece of music. Pay total attention. The polyphony of the birds and the wind outside, the occasional plane that flies overhead, the patter of rain on a window. Listen carefully and notice how listening is not just an opening of the mind, but an opening of the heart, a vital concern or care for the world, the source of which we call compassion, or love. Now, when I say that each chapter acts like a meditation, that's what I mean. Every chapter is only 3, maybe 4 pages at most. And it's such that it gives you pause at the end of the chapter to really think about what it said. That question of, who am I? Who is this person? And I struggle with that. I've struggled with that answer ever since I retired. Before retirement, my first definition of myself would have been, I'm a teacher. But the danger of doing that is that when I lose that formal title of teacher, do I run the risk of losing myself? We tend to define ourselves, at least in the United States, by our jobs. It's one of the first questions we ask people, what is it you do? And I think a more appropriate question would be, what is it you enjoy? What brings you joy in life? And in those ways, we find ourselves. And we don't find ourselves by going out and seeking it. We find ourselves in those quiet moments when we sit with that question and we listen. And I think it's important, like he says in the book, we listen with our hearts. We listen to the message that our hearts are saying. Now, that was one chapter that tended to be a little more focused on the Buddhist principles of it. But just to show you as an example, the very next chapter talks about a Chilean Navy patrol pilot who deposited Robert Kroll and a kitten on a tiny, uninhabited, rain and wind-lashed island off the southern tip of Patagonia. And it's this story of Robert Kroll trying to really live his days on that island in solitude. And what he goes through, what he comes up with, being with himself. And the chapter ends, I won't read the whole chapter, but the chapter ends, as I reread his journal and study the photo gallery on his website, an image of Bob as the last man on earth comes to haunt me. Yes, there is a great beauty and joy in the wilderness, but only when you know it can be shared with others. Where Bob, the only survivor of an Armageddon, I suspect his Patagonian solitude would have been intolerable loneliness devoid of meaning. Bob may have physically cut himself off from humankind, but he still had email. He used it to send coded signs of life to his friends once a month and get technical support on waterlogged outboard motors. Likewise, his friends agonized over whether to tell him about the 9/11 attacks in New York. They chose not to. This invisible umbilical cord bound him irrevocably to a human community. Perhaps the most useful aspect of my year alone in the wilderness, he wrote to me some years later, in 2017, was to come to accept that my inner world has its own inherent weather patterns, as does the external world. The recognition that I'm not in control and that gray days do not mean I've done something wrong, that all the ups and downs, light and dark, and parts of who I am, who we are. And as I said, it's those moments that really bind us into understanding the depths of ourselves. And unfortunately, as the book reminds us, we live in a world where solitude isn't really something that's accepted. We look at always being around people and always having noise in the background. So many houses you go into that the TV goes on first thing in the morning and never goes off throughout the day. That there's always some kind of noise that prevents us from sitting with our own thoughts. So it's a wonderful book. It's a very short book. The essays entail about 155 pages. And after that, it is his translation as a Buddhist scholar of the chapter of eights, where he looks at how those aspects translate into the English language. So if you're ever looking at the idea of how different people have gone through voluntary and involuntary aspects of solitude and then what they've learned about themselves through those times, it's a great book for you. And the idea of giving yourself some moments of solitude, maybe it's something that will inspire you. Just every now and then, turn off the cell phone, turn off the computer, and just go out into nature, take a hike, maybe even just when the weather warms up a little bit, sit in nature and enjoy it. But getting an understanding of where that solitude comes from. So, thank you for joining me. I apologize for some of the small breaks. I do realize I cannot allow myself to get delayed. That my best time to record is going to be in the morning because my dog Scout gets really a little yappier through the end of the day. She gets bored. And despite the fact that she goes on a lot of walks, she loves her attention. And I can't blame her for that. But, her whining does sometimes take away from where this goes on. So I'm going to leave it there and invite you all to have a good day. A reminder, the book is The Art of Solitude by Stephen Batchelor. So definitely something you might want to read. And I look forward to sharing a meditation with you on Wednesday morning. Have a great day.